Hi everybody, Gooman here with part 3 of the new Monster Roundup series for Monster Hunter Wilds, where I look at all the new monsters who were introduced in this title. I'm talking about what I liked, what I disliked, and anything else that comes to mind. We are going through the monsters mostly as they're introduced in the game, but we are switching up the order a little bit on this one to save our big exciting fight for the end of the video. So today we are covering Rompopolo, Hirabami, and Rey Dau in that order. It's not required to watch the previous videos in the series, however it will help me out a lot if you did, and it will make me feel good. So consider hitting the like button, saying hi in the comments, and even subscribing to my channel as a little treat for you and me. And as always, thank you so much for being here. It means a lot to me that I have any kind of audience for my videos, and I'm glad that at least someone enjoys them. Alright, let's get started. So the first monster for today, of course, is the Rompopolo, this disgusting creature, this mosquito-looking thing. I hate looking at it. I think it's super ugly. It's not a bad fight. I don't dislike this fight at all. I think it's pretty great. I think it just looks so gross, and looking at him just makes me want to exterminate the species. So if that was the intention, then great, it works. The Rompopolo, or Rompopolo, I'm not actually sure how to say it, is categorized as a brute wyvern, which is a category shared with the Chemetries, the big chicken. And if you notice, the brute wyverns share a sort of body type similarity in that they have these big upper body, these big torsos held up by two dinky little legs. The idea is that if you can hit their legs enough to do some damage, it'll topple them over, because they'll just kind of struggle to keep their oversized torsos up. So when in doubt, just smack at the legs, you'll get them down eventually. And once they're on the ground, you'll have free reign to smack any part that you want. So right there, I wanted to demonstrate that the Rompopolo uses poison in its arsenal. If you get hit by the purple fart clouds, you will take the poison debuff, which is a pretty dangerous status ailment. One of my least favorites to deal with, just because it lasts forever and does a lot of damage. I think this fight is deceptively simple. When you count the number of attacks it can do throughout the fight, I think it's a lot lower than some of the earlier monsters that you've already fought. However, since this is the first fight after Uthduna, which is like the boss of like the tutorial section, the kid gloves kind of come off with the Rompopolo fight. I think the idea here was to not give you a fight that's super complicated. However, if you kind of fail to react in the way that you're supposed to, you will get punished a lot harder. So if you're not careful about where you're standing in the middle of your combos, or if you're not actively looking at your surroundings, it's very easy to get trapped by his little explosion moves. That can do quite a bit of damage, especially if you keep getting hit by them, like if you're not putting in the effort to try to avoid those attacks. But if you can get past that, the fight itself, I think, is probably one of the easiest in the game, which is fine. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. So that tail swipe attack should look familiar. The Chemetries has that exact same animation, as do most brute wyverns actually throughout the series. One thing I do think is fun is that unlike most brute wyverns, where a lot of their power just comes from the fact that they have big bodies, they'll use moves like forward charges and tackles. They attack with their body a lot more often, on top of whatever special attacks they can do. So like Chemetries can play around with fire a little bit. Of course, Rompopolo can fart into the ground to make it explode. He also uses his arms quite a bit. He does have longer arms compared to the typical brute wyvern, which I think is interesting. But of course, the thing that makes it dangerous is the poison clouds. You really don't want to get hit by that, but you likely will a lot. Be sure to keep a lot of antidotes in your inventory. I think my favorite aspect of this fight is that as you fight it and you damage its body parts, the little bulbous parts of its body start deflating, and it just looks so sad. One of the more kind of gratifying damage effects throughout the game. It's that extra mile that makes it feel like you're making progress throughout a fight. And when his whole body is shriveled up like that, it just looks so grotesque. Just looking at it makes me want to just exterminate the species. I just want to get rid of him so bad. I like this fight. I think this video series is at the point where I just like all of the new fights. So I don't have a whole lot more interesting to say about him. I know I'm calling it ugly and gross, but I mean it in the best possible way. It's so repulsive and vile, this creature. Just looking at it makes me want to just destroy it. So mission accomplished. Fight's great. Would I want to see different variants of this fight? I don't know. I think we more than likely will, just because any kind of explosion effects, any kind of environmental interactions in the way that Rompopolo has, I think can be translated into other elements, obviously including stuff like fire or blast. I think it's a fairly decent bet we'll see a Rompopolo variant either in an update or in the expansion. I kind of hope we don't, just because I would rather see variants of other monsters that are new in this game. Speaking of master rank, typically with the way Capcom designs sort of progressive armors throughout the series, if you liked the Plague Doctor sort of aesthetic to the armor set, I'm going to predict that the master rank version will also come with like the iconic hat, the big Plague Doctor hat to kind of finish out the set. That's my prediction, at least. We'll lock it in. You guys can come back to this video after a couple of years and make fun of me for getting it wrong. Anyway, that's it for this one. Fun fight. I like it. Glad it's here. Round 2 will be up against Hirabami in the Ice Shard Cliffs. In the previous video at the end, I said that this video is going to be in the basin because I thought the big fire monkey was gonna be in this one, but I was wrong. We fight that one a little bit later. We're gonna be fighting this guy today. The Hirabami is another Leviathan type, brand new to the series. Lots of Leviathans in this game. It's good to see. I think the first thing you'll notice when you fight Hirabami is that it is almost always in the air, which you don't actually see too often. Even monsters like Rathalos spend a lot of time on the ground, whereas the Hirabami just seems to float. I would love to know the ecological reason for that. It doesn't look like it has like wings it's flapping, so there might be something else going on that keeps them afloat. Could just be gliding on their big face flaps. That could be it, actually. The fight itself, I think, is just okay. I don't consider it too exciting or interesting. It does have some ice attacks you have to watch out for, but at this point in the game, I feel like even new players would be comfortable enough to recognize the tells that monsters try to set up. Most of the Hirabami's most dangerous attacks are related to its tail. Not necessarily because they hit super hard, but they usually come at you fast. The attack telegraphs are pretty short, so if you're not careful, you can get hit by multiple in a row. That's kind of what makes it dangerous. As far as I understand, I don't think this monster has like the one big super attack that will take you out in one hit or anything like that. This is very much a death by 1,000 cuts kind of monster, which does kind of make sense. You do often see it as part of a group. I believe this monster is technically a pack monster, so you do see it floating around with a bunch of others sometimes. Almost every time you break apart off a monster, they'll drop a heavy slinger ammo, which you can then just gonna shoot back at the monster for some extra damage. One strategy with the Hirabami is that since the tail is accessible to hit pretty often, even while it's in the air, you could keep whacking at it. As you do, you'll notice that the tail does have multiple stages of part break, and each time it breaks, it'll drop, I believe it's almost always the heavy slicing pod, which you can shoot from your slinger to do massive amounts of damage, actually. So if you'd like, if you're struggling with the fight for any reason, if you can just take pot shots at the tail, you could just go for the part breaks, pick up the ammo, and then just shoot it at it. It does a ton of damage very safely. And if you can do enough damage while it's in the air, it will send it crashing down, which will give you a pretty nice opening to do some extra damage. Aside from that, the fight is actually extremely simple. I think the novelty of the fight is mostly that it just floats a lot, which at this point of the game, I'm not sure if that is enough for me to consider this fight super good. I don't dislike this fight. I think it's just okay. Definitely interesting to look at, but beyond that, I don't consider it too special. Another strategy with flyers, of course, is the flash pods, which here's a pro tip that you may or may not already know. So if you're playing with a controller, with your weapon drawn, the left trigger will engage focus mode, and while focus mode is engaged, you can click in your left thumbstick, and it will fire whatever ammo you have loaded in right now. So that's a slinger shot. The only limitation to using your slinger in that way is that you cannot fire the heavy rounds that you get from breaking monster parts. But with everything else, it should work. Now obviously to pick up a new ammo, you do have to put your weapon away. So like that, I just loaded on Frost Burst from the Dung Beetle guy. And now that I have it equipped, I can pull out my weapon again and fire. It's a really quick way to apply any special status that you might have. If you really want to, you can make ammo like poison knives or luring pods, dung pods, stuff like that. You can use all that with your weapon drawn. So that might actually be the one big attack that'll do a lot of damage, since it tends to use that when it successfully freezes you in place. Obviously, if he can crowd control you, then he's going to want to capitalize on that. Definitely watch out for monsters that can immobilize you, because their follow-up attack is more than likely designed to kind of cart you in one go. With a lot of the monsters, they'll have specific body parts that are better protected against certain kinds of attacks. In Monster Hunter games, if you hit a body part that's weak against whatever damage type you're using, that's called hitting a hit zone. The thing about the Hirabami is I think its entire body is a hit zone for every damage type. So you don't really have to aim your attacks anywhere in particular. It's just weak to everything all the time. One of the reasons why I think this fight's a little too easy for where you fight it in the game. Now this is adorable. So this is its sleeping state. It's just hanging there like those drapes. Really fitting for a monster that you find in the ruins of a lost civilization. I think from the right angle and the right distance, it's actually kind of easy to miss, which is cool. Design-wise, visually, great monster. It looks super cool. The armor set is a little hit or miss for me, but the weapons look pretty sweet. I'm a big fan of the lance, actually. I used the Hirabami lance for a lot of the game when I was going through. Anyway, we'll put this guy out of its misery and move on to our big boy for the video.
You're getting paid well for that one.
So the big fight of this video, of course, is the Rey Dau. I know this is a favorite of many players. Certainly a very striking looking monster. Rey Dau is the apex monster of the plains, of course, only appears during sandstorms. But if you can start a fight with it, you can kind of still fight it when the weather is a little bit clearer, which is nice. I mean, you want to appreciate things that look good, right? Yeah, I do love the design of this monster. It's so cool. What's there to say about this monster? I thought I would be kind of bored of this guy after fighting him so many times during the beta, but nah, this fight is awesome. It's so much fun. I'm actually gonna switch my weapon to the lance real quick. Of course, as soon as you start fighting it, the first thing you'll notice is the sort of otherworldly roar. I'm not a Rey Dau truther. I don't think there's any kind of weird like alien nonsense going on with the Monster Hunter. I think that's just how he sounds. Something I have thought about, and I'm not entirely sure what the correct answer is if you're familiar with kind of Monster Hunter ecology, lightning is a kind of an interesting element to talk about, because unlike other elements like water, ice, fire, very few monsters, if at all, actually produce their own lightning. Most lightning effects are at best manipulation of other things, either through being able to store it within their body, or like in the case of a monster like Kirin, which is an elder dragon, so obviously it'll have wacky powers. The Kirin can conjure lightning, but it doesn't necessarily produce it. if you're aware of the Zinogre, which is the most popular monster in the hunter community. The Zinogre is also a lightning type monster. However, it uses lightning by controlling electricity conducting insects that are floating. So he controls the bugs that then conduct electricity, but it doesn't necessarily have the ability to create or conjure electricity on its own. So the big question I have for the Rey Dau is, what's the deal there? When it goes into railgun mode, it's obviously like shooting a bolt of lightning at you. So if you ever come across these things called Great Thunderbugs, it's stuff like, it's these kinds of insects, and then I believe for Zinogre specifically, they're called Fulgur bugs. None of this really matters for the point of this video, but we'll just talk about it anyway, because I'm a huge nerd. So what I'm trying to say is that for most of the lightning aspect in monsters, it's typically about manipulating something else that can conduct electricity. For the most part, there is no organ that creates electricity in their body in the same way that a fire aspected monster can produce electricity, like the Rathian or the Rathalos has a thing in their body that sets their breath on fire so they can shoot it at you. So the question I have for the Rey Dau is this monster just good at conducting electricity? Does it take lightning hits to its body and then stores that energy to then shoot out from its railgun head? That's my question. I'm sure that's the most important question you can ask about a game about hunting monsters, but that's what I want to know, okay? When it's charged up and enraged, it's cackling with electricity. So to me, this reads as it's storing the charge, it's not necessarily like creating the charge. When you're fighting in the plains, always remember you have access to a lot of instant free healing in the form of plants and bugs. Use those. The fight itself, I think, is awesome. The Rey Dau has a really good mix of ground-based attacks and attacks from the air. Something I always felt about fights like Rathalos is that for a monster that spends so much time in the air and being annoying, it doesn't do a whole lot once it's there. Like, it can breathe fire at you in 2 to 4 different ways, but the Rey Dau has pretty much like an entire like set of combos that it can use while flying, which is awesome. Like, it's great to see. It doesn't feel like I'm just kind of sitting through a waiting, boring phase while it's flying. He actually like has different attacks that it can use that you have to kind of be on the lookout regards their telegraphs, and you want to avoid or counter appropriately. Has a mix of the wing attacks, its big slam down attacks, a couple different railgun attacks that will destroy you in one hit if you let it. So when I record these videos, I'm recording my commentary as I play, and then I just edit it together so it flows decently. And something I just realized with regards to my earlier question about whether this guy is a lightning producer or a conductor. Okay, so it definitely did kind of take a lightning to the face and charge itself up. I think I can safely say this is a conductor, not a producer. Learning more about the game through my own video. Haha. Anytime the Rey Dau uses its big railgun attacks, check your focus attack. Always be on the lookout near its face, because his entire face becomes a temporary weak spot you can exploit for a big counter opportunity. Be sure to do that. I'm playing with the music turned off because it just helps me out with the editing later, but one of the neat things about this fight, obviously, is the special music that it gets, the battle theme. And then it does have like an otherworldly air around it. I really doubt we're gonna get some significant like lore surprise about the Rey Dau being some kind of alien. The Monster Hunter isn't a game like that. I don't think this monster in particular is important enough for that to be some huge reveal. As we get to the end of a Rey Dau hunt, he'll make its way to its nest, which is, of course, covered in these conductant crystals. I like this arena a lot. It's so unique for just an arena, like as part of a world to be. And you even have this very specific type of ammo called the grounding pod, where if you pick it up and you shoot it on the ground, right, it's grounding, so it takes away like the electricity effect. For what good that'll do. Something worth mentioning, obviously. You probably would have noticed this too if you fought him here at any point. Anytime he does a lightning attack on a charged area of the ground, there will be a follow-up explosion following his attack, and that can hurt. The special thing about the lightning element when used against you is that if you take lightning damage the first time, you'll just get a debuff, which by itself doesn't do anything, so you don't have to worry too much about it. However, if you take another hit that does lightning damage, you will get stunned, and you will keep getting stunned for as long as you have the lightning debuff. So be very careful when fighting anything that does lightning damage. If you're not careful, you can get stuck in a stun loop where you're just getting demolished. So right here I have the lightning debuff. If I were to take another hit of lightning damage, if he does one, there, I took that hit. Well, the debuff effect went away before the stun could go off, so I got lucky there. I'm trying to... Okay, I actually did try to get hit by that. I love this fight so much. I think it's a great combination of just looking super cool and also being really fun. I mean, you can approach it like a big one-on-one brawl like you could with the Doshaguma. I think it's more fun to approach it like a call and response kind of fight where it does something and then you want to respond to it in a specific way. It feels so good to see those big hits coming and then be able to respond to it exactly how you're kind of supposed to, more so than just dodging through everything and then just smacking at it nonstop. I feel like this fight sort of rewards finesse more than just about most other fights in the game. And obviously, if you're trying to speedrun this fight, then yeah, just jump in there and whack at it nonstop. But the first few times you fight it, I think it's more fun to just kind of engage with it on its own terms. You know, you're the hunter trying to hunt the apex monster of this zone. You should probably be a little bit careful. That said, you know, after so many dozens of hours just spent fighting just this monster, I don't have any problems with just playing around it. To that end, I wouldn't say this fight is all too challenging. However, I'm probably not a good judge of difficulty, specifically on this fight. The Rey Dau is categorized as a flying wyvern, which to me, I think has the easiest roar to kind of see coming. The wind-up of its body is the most obvious, I think, out of all the monster types. It's the same animation as Rathian and Rathalos, so if you can figure out the dodge timing on those, then you can figure out Rey Dau just as easily. The big railgun attack does hurt a lot, and for the first few times I fought it, I definitely opted to do the hero dive dodge. So if you're sprinting away from a monster, you can hit your dodge button and you'll do this dive animation where you have a lot more invincibility frames. I used to use that a lot when it does the big railgun attacks, but over time you just kind of realize that I feel like the explosion looks a lot more scary than it actually is. The area effect of it in terms of damage is actually pretty small. Even with a weapon like a lance drawn, you should be able to get out of the danger zone in a hop or two. So don't be afraid of this guy. Being aggressive, I think, is fine. The closer you can stay to this monster, the less dangerous it is, I think. It's a lot easier to avoid the hardest hitting attacks. Obviously, it'll go up in the air and you'll have to deal with it how you have to, but you'll find that you'll have a lot more openings to exploit when you're close by than you'd realize. But all in all, man, this fight is awesome. I love it. I could fight it all day, and I have. I would love to see this monster back in a future title. I don't know if we will, just because with the naming convention of the Apex monsters, it just feels very of Monster Hunter Wilds. I don't know if these monsters necessarily have a place in future rosters. But that's just me looking at the vibes. I hope I'm wrong. I would love to see this fight back in every game if it wants to come back. I don't care. I will fight it forever. Overall, wonderful fight. 10 out of 10. I love it. Huge fan. Great job, Capcom. And that's the end of my video. As always, thank you so much for watching. I had another outro in mind, but when I loaded into the cliffs to start recording, I just came across Jindahad just chilling there, so there he goes. You can say hi to him. I had no idea he could do that. We are about halfway through the new roster. The next one, we're going to be going back to the Oil Well Basin to finish off the new ones there, as well as look at the 5th zone of this game. So spoiler alert, if you haven't gotten that far in the game yet, the next video will cover an area of the game that had not been shown at all in the marketing material. So now we're going into real spoiler territory. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.